So, welcome back to 3rd Age Reforged and to another battle replay, and today we have a custom scenario, albeit on a map that we have seen before because this is the Barrow Downs, but this is a very thematic ambush in many ways because the Barrow Downs, of course, was the site where Cardolan suffered a pretty grisly defeat at the hands of Angmar, and that is going to be the situation today. Although, we may see Cardolan get rescued on this occasion. Angmar has got them surrounded on all sides. You can see in here the Cardolan army is most certainly surrounded by the dangerous hordes of Angmar, but we do also have the potential reinforcements of Eclipse over here, who is going to be playing as Arthedain, so their fellow petty kingdom, which formerly made up Arnor, is going to be trying to come to their beleaguered allies' aid. And we will go through, I think, the forces of good first and foremost, seeing as we're already here. An Eclipse commanding the relief force of Arthedain. So this isn't a particularly long battle because of course it's going to be very brutal in the early stages. Cardolan have nowhere to hide, nowhere to post up. Angmar are going to be upon them very quickly, which is the most dangerous way to try and fight them. So Arthedain are also going to need to be quite fast. Now Dunedain Peacekeepers, very, very nice units of line infantry. They are good on the attack. They'll be able to hoover up most of the lower end Angmar units. However, they don't have AP as one-handed axemen used to have in one of the previous versions of the game, so they won't be as effective as you might expect against stuff like Guardians of Khan Doom or the Witch Realm units, any of the really heavily armoured Angmar infantry. The Peacekeepers will still do okay against them because they are still Dunedain. They do still have the skill that comes with being a Dunedain class unit, but they're going to be a little bit more efficient against the lower end units because they really will do very well against them with their higher base attack. Lower base defense as well, but of course being Dunedain offsets that to the point where it's kind of just regular. So yeah, Dunedain army on the front of many, many Peacekeepers. In fact, that's 4 units of Peacekeepers. That's a very high quality first force to send in. Just in behind, he's got the Arthedain men-at-arms, which are not as good as the Dunedain that are just in front of them in most ways. The exception to that when they have the armour upgraded here is they are more heavily armoured, and with their shields as well, it does make them a little bit more resilient to ranged fire, which can be useful. In this situation, perhaps not, because I don't think Angmar are going to be focusing too heavily on Arthedain approaching them. They're going to try and crush Cardolan first and foremost, and then pivot to try and face Arthedain. But the Arthedain men-at-arms, definitely a solid men-at-arms class unit, especially when you fully upgrade their armour. They're not going to win you the battle, but they will help your front line not to lose it. Speaking of which, one of the best tools that Arthedain and Cardolan both have, actually, to really help shore up their front line for not a great deal of money is going to be their Pikemen. The Arthedain Pikemen with the armour upgrade here as well makes them just that little bit more resilient both in melee and at range, but of course the main thing that sets Pikemen apart is going to be the phalanx formation with that extra range that pikes have. In this situation, pikes really they just need to get onto the front line and help shore up the infantry, the more damage dealing infantry, so that they can do most of the work, because time is of the essence. Cardolan won't have long before Arthedain, or Angmar I should say, are really doing the business to them. The Pikemen are just going to be here to make sure that Arthedain can shore up their own position in case they fail to save Cardolan and ultimately have to try and face Angmar alone. Speaking of which, we also have the dismounted Fornost Arrayed Knights, which are very similar actually in many ways to the Dunedain Peacekeepers. I can only apologise about the dog barking. They do have mostly some of the same strengths. They do have better melee defense as a result of being that swordsman shock infantry, I should say. So they don't have the AP, which would be quite useful for cracking through that thick Angmar plate. But having said that, they will still be able to outskill most of the Angmar infantry, so it is a bit of a trade-off there. Dunedain Mounted Company, so the cavalry is going to be here. The Dunedain Riders, they are melee cavalry, so they're not going to be able to clatter into the back of the Angmar attack and do massive damage right from the off. But they will still help, and of course, if Angmar do have any wargs of their own on the field, the Dunedain Mounted Company will be able to go toe-to-toe with them very, very efficiently. I say very efficiently. They'll be able to do well against wargs in a way that Lancers would not. Dunedain Troll Slayers, again, a very Dunedain-themed army, this one, which does make a certain amount of sense. The Troll Slayers, really good in melee, really good at range, one of the best tools to bring against Angmar, I think, because all the AP that Arthedain's main infantry lacks, the Dunedain Troll Slayers bring in spades, so very, very effective there. The axe on their back, of course, and the javelins. Whether they can get into a set position to fire nicely remains to be seen, but even if they don't, to be fair, if they do get engaged in melee, it's not the end of the world because of how strong they are in melee. Wardens of the North, armour-piercing missiles, another way that Arthedain can get some of their AP done. Also good in melee as well, very, very strong all around. And at the back, the General's Bodyguard going to be in the Dismounted Knights of Illuminus, which they're all about their defense, really. Very heavily armoured, heavily shielded, really tough to wear down. and they're just going to be here to make sure everything is buffed and raring to go. Dunedain scouts are here as well as some more Dunedain mounted company, so yeah, some horse archers to get into the fray quickly as well. So a pretty good relief force this. We'll see if Eclipse can get in and support Cardolan quickly enough. Speaking of which, we have Inarius playing as one of the Cardolan forces. We do have some Hearthguard of Amon Sul over here, some mercenary guildsmen. Morale might be a real issue here for Cardolan. Excuse me. Because, of course, Cardolan's morale is known to be quite low, and that only exacerbates the problem when your formations are being compromised, and getting a good formation where you can defend from all flanks is going to be very difficult for Cardolan in this situation, and that is by design, of course. Mercenary guildsmen are here though. Armour piercing on them will actually be quite useful against quite a lot of Angmar stuff, but their morale is low, of course. We have the Minhiriath sharpshooters, I should say. Armour piercing at range and in melee, of course, with their crossbows and their maces. The problem is, how long will they actually be able to use their crossbow ammunition for? Not very. Angmar is right there. So they might get 1, possibly 2 volleys off some of these crossbows if they're fortunate. Outside of that, though, they are going to have to get to melee. Wardens of Tir Gorthad, again, pikes, very good from facing enemies from one direction, but they're going to be attacked from multiple. So they're going to have to try and form up a sort of surround, they're going to have to bank up in almost like a circle or a square if they can, with as many units as he can here in Arius, and see if that works out. Minhiriath Archer is going to be in a similar situation as the sharpshooters, only they're not as good in melee, to be honest with you. I've always thought that really the Minhiriath Archers should be the ones that are really good in melee, because it would bring much more of a reason to bring them, and it would give a noticeable weakness to the Minhiriath sharpshooters, but that's just my opinion, I guess. Minhiriath Archers shooting in that direction as well. Some more archers here. Some Greenway Garrison footmen, so cheaper pikes. They'll actually be even more at risk than the Wardens of Tir Gorthad here, because they can of course be surrounded and broken off a little bit more easily. Man, my voice is on its last legs. Another unit of them, and also some Dunedain captains over here as well. And then getting into another army for Cardolan, we have King Angmar. He's got some Hearthguard of Amon Sul there. A couple of units of the Greenway Garrison spearmen. Just in behind we have some Greenway Garrison archers as well. These Greenway units are going to struggle. Could break free with the Royal Court House Thorondor potentially, which could do a lot of good damage. Over here, a little bit more of a formation for the Greenway Garrison's footmen, either side of the Manatar Roman Gatekeeper, so a bit of a defensive position they've got here in the middle, but they're still going to be surrounded on all sides, of course. Tharbad Warhammers are in close attendance too. Minhiriath Men-at-Arms, not too dissimilar to the Arthedain Men-at-Arms, albeit they can't have their armour upgraded, so with both units having no upgrades, the Minhiriath are actually better, but of course it's always nice to be able to upgrade the Men-at-Arms. Minhiriath Archers over there, a couple of units of the Men-at-Arms. We also have some Wardens of Tir Gorthad, and some Dunedain Rangers actually, which is interesting, and then perhaps a final army for the Forces of Arna. We actually have another army from Arthedain here from Fight for Action, some dismounted Knights of Annuminus, some Evendim Spearmen fully upgraded, as well as some Arthedain Pikemen. Got some dismounted Fornoster Rain Knights either side of another unit of Arthedain Pikemen. We have some Arthedain Marksmen already starting to fire, some more Arthedain Pikes over here. We've got some dismounted Fornoster Rain Knights, some Evendim Archers, some more dismounted Fornoster Rain Knights. So a lot of good units, I have to say, especially in the Arthedain armies for the what is effectively the defenders, because they are being ambushed here. Evendim Archers, some Fornoster Rain Defenders. They're a scenario-only unit now, actually, and they blend in almost perfectly with the, well, they do. They use the same unit model as the new Evendim Spears, so I'm not entirely sure what the purpose of having them in the scenario is, to be honest with you. Arthedain Men-at-Arms fully upgraded. And finally, potentially a really devastating unit actually, is the Knights of Annuminus, the mounted version. If they can get free and start charging into the back of the Angmar force, it could be very, very problematic for them. Now though, the Angmar army, starting off with Dark 5200 of the Eclipse Cloud. I'm gonna go ahead and say that this is probably blindness. He's got some Witch Realm Pikemen, so they'll be really useful obviously for closing the jaws on the Arthedain forces, especially if they can't get their own pikes into formation, which they won't be able to attack from both sides, obviously, the pikes, at least not everywhere on the field. Blackwatch Legion, really, really strong, great shield infantry, good for pushing through. They're better in melee than the Blackguard of Barad-dûr as well, so they do have a good amount of utility here. The Witch Realm Pikemen are also fully upgraded, it's worth mentioning. We have got some Blackwatch Legion, some Witch Realm Blackguard as well, so really strong Witch Realm Blackguard. We have some Trolls of Angmar, some Witch Realm Hammerguard, not too surprising there, over on this little hill. We have got some Barrow Wights, we've got some Trolls of Angmar, lots of Trolls of Angmar actually, some more Hammer Guard, some more Blackguard. So this is an incredibly strong army, this, from Angmar. It's interesting because it doesn't look terribly large. In fact, you could even say that the people being ambushed outnumber the people doing the ambushing, but the quality of these units is very, very high. Witch Realm Pikemen with a bunch of the Bodyguard tier units, Trolls and Barrow Wights near them. We'll see how Viper Action deals with that. We also have HRE Mr. Meanie, who's going to be playing as another one. Witch Realm Scourge Raiders already firing in. Double ranks of them. We've got some Trolls of Gundabad. Obviously, Trolls going to be very difficult to stop them from just ploughing into your lines, but if you can get some shock infantry on them, they won't be as scary as they could be, or could otherwise be. More Scourge Raiders, some fully upgraded Guardians of Khan Doom. Very defensive in nature, but they should keep the assault going. Blackwatch Legion over here, and up on this little hill we've got some more Pikemen. Over on the other side, near another one of these barrows, we can see yet more Trolls, more Witch Realm Hammer Guard from Mr. Sneakman this time. We've got some Angmar Halberds, probably the lowest, well, definitely the lowest tier unit we've seen from Angmar so far, but the AP is still going to be useful against all of these Western Kingdoms. Witch Realm Pikemen, Witch Realm Hammer Guard as well. We've got some more Blackwatch Legion, more Trolls. The theme has definitely been set here. He's got more Halberds, but he's also got Pikes in behind. So a good combination there of the Phalanx units. Yeah, Angmar Halberds and more Angmar Halberds. And the final, quote-unquote, attacking army in this situation. Actually, no, that's still HRE Mr. Meanie. Well, there we go. So he's got some Blackwatch Legion, Witch Realm Pikemen, Witch Realm Hammer Guard, and some Gundabad Guard. It's interesting, actually, to see that this rather small force is the one that's... there are the Witches. Better be careful of them, because if I zoom in on them, there's a chance that the game could crash. But without further ado, let's begin. And actually, immediately, we're going to go into half speed, because this is going to get underway very, very quickly, as all of the ranged units that are in range already are going to start doing the business. As we can see, the Witch Realm Scourge Raiders are going to be throwing their axes into the slightly prepared ranks of the Cardolan forces. You can see them in Hiriath Man-at-Arms taking a lot of damage. A lot of them will get back up, to be fair, because they are decently armoured and decently shielded, but a huge amount of base damage from axe throwers, which means even units that are fairly well prepared for dealing with projectiles are going to struggle. Meanwhile, over here you can see all of those axe throwers already doing their thing. The Royal Court of House Thorondor are actually trying to go right for the axe throwers. Now, they will break through this side swipe from the Trolls, but that is still going to hurt them quite a lot. Those Trolls are going to be able to do some good damage here to the Cardolan Riders as they charge on in to the Scourge Raiders. Meanwhile, as we see over here, the Abendim Archers trying to fire away as the forces of Angmar close in. Orc Fellas have revealed themselves. That's a good point. A lot of these units could be hiding, of course, with Snaga Stalkers and the like. Always going to be a potential sticking point. Fornost Terrain Defenders charging in. The Pikes are going to be able to close the jaws on them. Interesting, actually, to see that the Knights of Anubis, maybe they did try to slip away out the back, but now they're going to get sandwiched by 2 units of Orc Fellas, which, I mean, if they stick around in melee, the Orc Fellas will start to inflict a pretty grisly toll on the Knights of Anubis, so he definitely wants to try and pull them out of there if he can, but possible escape routes are sort of drying up here. I mean, this is a relatively thin line of an ambush, but the quality that's here is to the point where you really want to be very, very careful with what you're doing. Fornost Terrain Defenders, Pikes and Heavy Axes, good for pinning them in place and then dishing out the damage. You can see here the dismounted Fornost Terrain Knights trying to do their best to prevent the assault, but the Witch Realm Blackguard are coming in with the support of the Barrow Wights as well. Archers firing their projectiles all over the place, trying to pick their targets where they can, while they can. Similar story over here as well. Inarius doing the same with his archers and, I would assume, with his crossbows, but his crossbows, yeah, definitely already getting engaged, which is not too surprising. Mr. Sneakman was never going to allow him to use those crossbows for an extended period of time. These Wardens of Tirn Gorthad are going to do a really, really good job against a depleted unit of Orc Fellas already, but that is definitely the thinnest point of the assault for Mr. Sneakman. He's got a nice blob over here of Blackwatch Legion who are going to be pushing their way through the Tharbad Warhammers, who will do very nicely if they can pin them down in melee, but they're getting run through here. They've got some mercenaries to back them up, but I mean, Angmar have got a lot of numbers here, so he's definitely focusing his attentions. Hearthguard of Amon Sul trying to fight with the Witch Realm Pikemen. The Witch Realm Pikemen, though, just getting in their faces, making sure they can't use their ammunition. That's going to be key here for the forces that are on the attack here. Just having a look over there, the Witches just got to make sure we don't zoom in on them when they fire. Barrow Wights slowly shambling their way in as well, so you can definitely see that the pressure is already on. However, the Dunedain cavalry from Eclipse is going to arrive over here first and foremost, so it's definitely worth, I think, Mr. Meany's time to put his Barrow Wights actually at the back of the line, because that means any cavalry charges or archer fire that comes in from behind the Barrow Wights will get hit first, rather than something really nasty like your Hammer Guard, which you want on the front line, cracking skulls, which is definitely what they're doing at the moment. Meanwhile, this cavalry has broken free. I mean, all credit to the Royal Court of House Thorondor. They did manage to wriggle free of those trolls, and now they're going to be in the back lines causing trouble in the same way as that Dunedain cavalry is going to be quite shortly. But the trolls are over here, and there's a lot of trolls. Lancers will do nicely off the charge against trolls, but you really don't want to just wander into melee with them, because otherwise the huge damage the trolls can dish out can be a real problem against the smaller units of cavalry. Witcher Hammer Guard taking a real beating there from the Minotaur Roman Guardians, and actually maybe a bit of a mistake here from Angmar. There's nothing really they have over here which can actually occupy these Minotaur Roman gatekeepers, which could prove to be a bit of a problem. Mr. Meany is a little bit stretched, however, so it's a bit more understandable perhaps. King Ammar's, the strongest point of his army, has definitely done some good work over here. You can see where a huge amount of damage from the Scourge Raiders came in, but now they're in melee and getting overwhelmed. So here in the middle, Cardolan look like they're going to be able to break free. Over here, meanwhile, I don't think that fate is going to be afforded to Viper Action. His army has been absolutely crushed between these two pincering forces of Dark 5200 of the Eclipse Cloud. And these Evendim archers, I mean, they've got the armour upgrade, but it's not really going to help them against dedicated forces. And the armour upgrade as well, they're up against armour-piercing infantry. This could be a problem, though. The Knights of Anubis did break free of the Orc fellas in the end. Interesting choice of target to charge into, though. They will do some damage off the charge, those Witcher Pikemen. They need to cycle out of there very quickly, otherwise they will end up losing far too many knights at the hands of those polearms. There is still the Arthedain men-at-arms in there, but they are definitely trapped. You can see over here the Fornost Rain defenders as well, just being forced backwards by the pikes, and those that aren't are going to get skewered. Definitely a limited shelf life for them. Barrow Wights as well, obviously making it really difficult to break this siege, and obviously a huge amount of trolls as well concentrated in one location. Going up against the right targets as well, trolls are going to be at their most effective against pikes, because pikes really won't be able to deal that much damage in return to them. And so those trolls of Angmar are going to do some good work against those pikes, especially with Hammer Guard in tow. Viper Action still has a decent block of pikes though, so he is going to need those trolls to be the siege breakers. Hammer Guard are also actually being overwhelmed through sheer numbers, a combination of Evendim spearmen and the dismounted Knights of Anubis. The armour piercing will do grisly damage to those Arthedain warriors, but still not ideal for them. Meanwhile, Inarius' Cardolan force trying to hold on. You can see that some trolls have made their way in now. The trolls that were initially chasing after the Royal Court of House Thorondor were now in melee. I would actually say this is worthwhile, because you really do need to make sure these sharpshooters can't shoot along your lines, otherwise you're in massive trouble. But yeah, Barrow Wights are obviously going to occupy these forces for a lengthy amount of time. Royal Court of House Thorondor are coming in though, also, as are the Dunedain. I'm just going to keep track on those witches over there. But yeah, the Dunedain cavalry has arrived from Eclipse, charging into the back of the Barrow Wights, but the Barrow Wights won't mind too much, to be honest with you. Like, they are going to be able to absorb a lot of damage, even caught between Dunedain riders and the foot-bound Dunedain captain. Witcher Blackguard are in here. You can see where the quality has been, because the Blackguard have just carved through the Minhiriath that were in their way, especially with the pikes, the Great Shield Infantry and the Trolls in tow. Good concentration of force here. Hugely chaotic battle. Royal Court of House Thorondor charging in, going after a combination of Hammer Guard and Black Watch Legion. Not the worst idea, but they need to cycle out of there pretty quickly. Otherwise, the Hammers in particular will start doing some really nasty damage in sustained melee. Warns of Tirngorthad are also being defeated now. Their formation has been compromised somewhat. I mean, the Witcher Pikemen, they are much more depleted, but probably similar in terms of their combat abilities. The Warns of Tirngorthad are a better unit because of what they offer in terms of morale boosting capabilities, certainly for Cardolan. Meanwhile over here, Trolls of Angmar now moving on from the Minhiriath sharpshooters, perhaps not wanting to stick around too close to that AP that they have going on. Dunedain scouts getting up on top of the hills. This Gundabad Guard has been left behind actually by Mr. Meany, which could be used to zone out some of this cavalry, to be honest with you. Warns of the North are up on the hill as well, firing in with their armour-piercing missiles. If they pick their targets well, they're definitely going to be an important factor in this battle. Meanwhile, Barrow slowly shambling their way across. In comes a charge from the Knights of Anumnus over here, trying to get Dark 5200 out of here. Is Viper action, but he's going to struggle with that, I think, because every charge he's going to make in here, I mean, they're up against the very finest Witch Realm units. These pikes making things a little bit more difficult for Angmar, perhaps, but you can see with Barrow moving in, most of the units over here have been polished off at this point. It's just a solitary unit of Evendim archers that are firing at point blank range. They won't last too much longer, and then a decently numerous force, including Blackwatch Legion, pikes and Orc Fellas, can also start making their way along. So I definitely think Viper action here. There goes, I believe that's Inarius' general at the hands of Mr. Sneakman's halberds. But yeah, I think Viper action, all he can hope to do here at this point is to try and... What on earth was that? What is this? What is this sorcery? Well, I saw the Witches fire in the distance, but the Witches, they're firing at one part of the line in particular, which, I mean, that is going into King Ammar's units, which, to be fair, that's a massive amount of destruction, isn't it? Huge devastation inflicted onto King Angmar there, but King Angmar was also victorious in his little ambush. He was going up against mostly Scourge Raiders and a more basic force than Viper Action and Inarius have had to deal with, but huge amount of damage that. But they will need it, I think, Angmar in this situation, because while Angmar are doing pretty well for the time being, now Eclipse's army is really starting to arrive on the scene. I do wonder how this is going to affect their chances. In come the Dunedain Riders. Again, they're not going to make a huge impact onto the Barrow-wights. Like, they're taking losses, the Barrow-wights here, and part of that I think is down to their really low mass when the cavalry comes charging in. But this is the purpose of Barrow-wights. They're just there to get in the way, be that sort of, well, not meat shield because they're ghosts, but you know what I mean. But here comes Eclipse's army now. Arthedain men-at-arms coming in, pikes following in behind to help shore things up, which all of these fresh units are going to be quite difficult, I think, for Mr. Meanie and for Mr. Sneakman to have to deal with. And they may have to content themselves with just trying to inflict as much damage onto this Dunedain relief force as they possibly can. As you can see, the black arrows streak through the air, the armour-piercing projectiles that they signify. Four Nosterrain Knights coming forward. Also, a Dunedain Troll Slayers. A little bit of a misplay here from Mr. Meanie, it must be said. Like, this unit of Gundabad Guard is effectively going to be completely wasted. And they're decent enough that you don't want to do that. They're not the most important unit on the field by any means. I mean, they are also absorbing ammunition, so it may not be the end of the world, but still. Mr. Sneakman continuing to pursue Inarius' Hearthguard up the hill, and I'm not sure he's going to be able to save some of them. There's a troll in the way as well, but he's trying to get up here with some of Eclipse's relief force. The trolls are going to leave this area, so yeah, Inarius is actually going to be, he's going to be able to fight his way out of this, I think. Warns of Tir Gorthad fighting back against the Barrow-wights and the Hellbirds. Be interesting to see who wins that, especially with some Tharbad Warhammers in there. But you can see that I think Angmar, sort of, Mr. Sneakman is sending his trolls off. Gonna shift their position. Mr. Meanie has turned most of his force around at this point, having, you know, most of Cardolan that was in front of him have fallen. So he is now able to fully meet Eclipse's advance in the eye. Trolls are also coming in support, but I think at this point, honestly, the numbers that Eclipse is bringing to the table is going to be too much for Mr. Meanie's force to try and beat back. Maybe with Mr. Sneakman's support he can make something happen. But the Dunedain Mounted Company are now into the back lines. Meanwhile, whatever happens to those Witchers, wherever they may be, they did a huge amount of damage. I wonder if that if the fire is still over here. I mean, it's not. There was some weirdness happening just a moment ago, for sure. The Hiriath archers trying to fight into position, but over here we can see, slowly but surely, Viper Action's army is being overwhelmed, which, I mean, this is the problem. Eclipse's relief force is all well and good helping the Cardolan forces in the south of the map, but Viper Action's Arthedain army that was at the back of the caravan, as it were, have been overwhelmed, and this will mean that there's going to be a whole other Angmar force that they have to deal with heading their way. You can see over there that the Knights of Anumnus have managed to get away. They've done some decent charging in here, but it hasn't made a massive impact on the Angmar army back here. As you can see, Blackwatch Legion are going to be able to completely surround the Evendim spearmen that are fighting hard on the front line. But obviously, as what is effectively a militia spear, they're the most impressive looking militia unit in the game, I have to say, when you fully upgrade their armour, even more so than the Eastron Clansmen. But militia they still are, and with a rear charge from the back, the fear-causing Barrow-wights from the front, I can't imagine they're going to last all that much longer. Meanwhile, pikes are still here again. Like, one thing that Arthedain can often do is hold pushes up with these pikes, or try and hold their front line together with pikes, but with this amount of Witch-Realm pikemen on the field, they didn't really have the advantage in that regard either. Back here, in comes some Orc fellas to close off the final hope of escaping this little area. Some of those basic Orc axemen closing the door, and that is going to leave Viper action with nowhere to go, really. His army is just going to have to be content that that is its role. Let's see, there are the Witchers. Just keep an eye on them. Meanwhile, the force that was down here, where the Witchers initially did fire, Cardolan are going to be able to polish off what's left of the Angmar resistance over there. There goes another one of the Arthedain generals. I would assume that that is a Viper action. Meanwhile, some fiery projectiles coming into the rear there. A pretty tame charge from the Royal Court, but that should be enough to finish Angmar off down here, to be honest with you. Over here it will take a little bit more doing, because we're talking about Barrowites. This is where they're at their best, really, when they are shoring things up, slowing things down, allowing Angmar to control the battle in that way. Meanwhile, Dunedain Peacekeepers moving in. Here are the Barrowites. Again, Barrowites getting surrounded by Dunedain Peacekeepers and Tharbad Warhammers over here, but this is an important role that they must play. Yeah, Eclipse's reinforcements have definitely won the day up here, I would say. At this point, all Angmar are going to be able to do is try and go after bits and pieces as best they are able. Blackwatch Legion are there. Dunedain Troll Slayers engaged in melee, but it's by a smattering of Witch-Realm pikemen that aren't really going to last all that much longer, it must be said. That is one of the Angmar forces. I'm not sure who that would be. Meanwhile, ooh, that's a bit of a mistake here from Mr. Meany. I think he was waiting quite a while to get the ideal second salvo off with his Witchers, but he's ended up waiting too long, and Eclipse has seen them, and they've been pounced upon now by Dunedain Riders and the Troll Slayers. And the Witchers are quite fragile. They may have quite a few hit points, but really not going to be able to do much against this kind of thing. I think actually we will go up to 1 speed now. Barrowites are still doing their thing on the front line, but I actually think with the arrival of the reinforcements they might be alright. I mean, Dark 5200 is going to have to get over here pretty quickly, I think, in order to rescue Angmar's chances at making this ambush a success, to be honest with you. The Royal Court of House Thorondor are charging in, but they're charged mostly into the back of their own men there, so not going to be as effective as maybe they would like. But yeah, you can see Angmar, they do still have some strong points. They have some Witch-Realm pikemen over here. They have some Blackguard in there as well. But the problem here is one of numbers. And Eclipse's army that came in to reinforce was of good quality. Lots of Dunedain in it. Upper end units, even their men-at-arms, full upgrades. So they came in, and I think they're going to be able to sweep most of this Angmar resistance away. But Eclipse is going to be the only one with anything resembling a healthy army by the end, I think. For the Kingdoms of Angmar, Viper Action's army has been wiped out. Inarius, his army's taken heavy damage. King Ammar's will as well, because ultimately he's going to have to deal with Dark 5200's army. Over here, meanwhile, Fornosterrain Knights. Interesting that victory seems certain for them against the Barrowites. Barrowites also seem to think victory is certain for them, so one of them's lying. I think actually the Barrowites are still healthy enough that they should be able to carry the day. The problem is the Barrowites are also going to have to deal with the Troll Slayers once they're done picking the bones of these units up here. There's still a large amount of Trolls, which I think, yeah, now is the right time to send them in. If they just leave them, they're not going to be able to accomplish anything with some Trolls that are just hooning around the outside of the map. Problem is, there's Wardens of the North in here. Dunedain Peacekeepers won't be the worst against Trolls either. They may not pierce armour, but their base attack is still high enough that they won't do too badly against Trolls. The Wardens of the North are going to be the real problem there. Going to be pretty damn good against the Trolls. Over here, meanwhile, victorious Eclipse, and now he's going to be able to send over his forces to try and help out against the onrushing Angmar force that came from the north. King Ammar has already moved to meet this army to try and make sure it can't get too close to what remains of its allies further up the hill there. And largely they're going to be successful, I think. I mean, you can see there's Minhiriath archers firing from the flank. They're going to be able to get into melee with them soon enough, I think, because there's not really much guarding them other than this battered and bruised units of Greenway Garrison spears, but good use of the Minhiriath archers, good use of the sharpshooters. I have to say that's something that King Angmar seems to have done pretty well in this battle. Get his skirmishers into a position to shoot, which is one thing as Angmar you don't really want to be allowing them to do in this in a scenario like this. You have every advantage to try and make that not happen. Then captured. Again, Orc fellas charging into the front of Minotaur Roman gatekeepers as well. That's going to be tough for them. Generals are starting to fall left and right now. Here's a big flank coming in though. I mean, this could be pretty disastrous for Cardolan. I mean, gatekeepers will be able to hold their morale together decently well. Hearthguard of Amon Sul are firing in, but it's going to need to be quick here from Dark 5200. Otherwise, Eclipse 2500 is going to come in and counter surround the surround. But the Blackguard coming in here from the rear. Minotaur Roman gatekeepers holding on. I mean, at this point they might not even be surrounded for much longer though, because I can't imagine those fellas are going to be here for much longer. More Orc fellas coming in. Blackwatch Legion engaging the Hearthguard of Amon Sul. Just having a little look over here, because there's still a smattering of Angmar resistance at the top here. But yeah, Troll Slayers charging downhill. Not many Arthedain Knights left, but the Troll Slayers should be enough to finish off the Barrow Wights at this point. Yeah, and over here the Dunedain have finished everything off, so Angmar defeated here, and it all comes down to Mr. Eclipse Cloud. I mean, he's going to do some pretty nifty damage here to King Angmar's force that move forward to try and meet him, but I don't think there's going to be enough to turn things around fully into Angmar's favour. They don't have anything that would really turn the screw like Witches anymore. There was only one unit of them on the field as far as I'm aware, which of course would be quite good for trying to break up a blob like this. In comes the very depleted units from Viper Action, his Knights. And yeah, that was enough to break off those Orc fellas actually, so he's still contributing to his team. Royal Court of House Thorondor moving in. This will allow the Gatekeepers to just fight from one side as well, albeit it's against some of the deadliest Witch Realm units there are, so it's going to be fairly difficult. But you can also see that this is the problem, like the forces that attack from the front are actually routing for Angmar at this point, so it's no longer a surround, and worse, Angmar have got themselves surrounded now because the armies are going to be able to move in. Shooting from the hill, Hearthguard of Amon Sul, not the most damaging, but still going to be contributing there. Tharbad Warhammers, going to be pretty good for cracking through the heavy plate of the Blackwatch Legion there. Let's go down to half speed for just a second again, so that we don't miss the large advance. But here, Witch Realm Blackguard, yeah, obviously Minhiriath archers don't stand a chance against Witch Realm Blackguard, but the victories for Angmar are going to be few and far between, and they're not going to be large enough in size, I think, to swing the fight back into their favour at this stage. Orc fellas pushing in on the sharpshooters, at least preventing them from firing, albeit temporarily. And here we go. Inarius with what he has left, but especially Eclipse with all of those Dunedain and those heavily armoured legions from Arthedain pushing in, and now they're going to try and wipe away the last of the Angmar resistance here. In the background we can see some Dunedain Peacekeepers charging in, going to save the Gatekeepers, which they would have lost eventually, but with these reinforcements that is now no longer the case. Dunedain Peacekeepers, Arthedain Men-at-Arms, Arthedain Pikemen, tons of numbers coming in. There's also some there's actually some Barrow Wights in the backfield over here from Dark 5200, but of course they're slow. They've had to waddle quite a long way. And that's obviously the problem with Barrow Wights. Like, they would have been very useful actually on the front to take the initial charge, but he didn't have the luxury of time here. He had to move his army quickly to try and save his allies, but it was too late by then. And I think it was overall the quality of the relief force that was always going to be quite difficult for Angmar to deal with. Like, they had a lot of really high-end units, but they didn't have the numbers to go with it really to meet an army like this. Like, they could have won the ambush without the relief force fairly comfortably, I think. But when you're talking about a whole other army which is mostly made up of Dunedain tier quality, it's always going to be quite difficult, I think, for Angmar in a situation like this. Here the Blackwatch Legion, surrounded on all sides. I do like the new Blackwatch Legion model. Makes them look much more intimidating, and their armour looks much more impressive. Meanwhile, some more units being committed over here to try and stop the Witch Realm units from just running roughshod all over everything. And it's dismounted Knights of Anumna, so Eclipse's general is in over here. I think actually I would back the Blackguard in a fight between the two. But the Blackguard have also seen a little bit more action than the Knights of Illuminus, so you never know. Speaking of which, there's the mounted Knights of Illuminus that Viper Action still has left. I think that's all that remains of his army, so he may not live to see the end of this battle if he continues to be that gung-ho about things. Have to wait and see. Still the Royal Court of House Thorondor as well, so they did manage to escape with their cavalry, which obviously does certainly help matters. Meanwhile, what's left of the fighting force on foot over here has pretty much been run over at this point, which are on Blackguard and I don't know if there's any Hammer Guard left. There is 3, but obviously with this amount of Arthedain forces that they are now facing, they don't really stand too much of a chance there. Go back up to 1 speed now. No danger of us missing anything now. Arthedain men at arms moving forward, so they are still going to have to deal with the Barrow Wights, which of course are sort of locked morale. That's going to take them quite a while to grind their way through these Barrow Wights, but you could say the Barrow Wights are fighting very much on home turf, considering we're in the Barrow Downs. Over here meanwhile, Tharbad Warhammer's victory seems certain. I mean, they are a very strong unit at dealing with Blackwatch Legion. I would have thought the Witch Hunt, well, I mean, that explains quite a lot. They're getting support from on high. Hearthguard of Amon Sul. Without that, they probably would have, well, they definitely would have lost this fight, to be honest. But with that support from the archers, and also with a unit of Wardens of Tyr and Gorthad from Inarius coming in, this little pocket of resistance is not going to last all that much longer. Some routing pikes over there. What's going on? They're firing at the Witch Hunt pikemen. Fair enough. Those Menhiriath archers just enjoying a spot of casual shooting now that they've done most of their important work. But yeah, it is definitely mostly Eclipse's army left. There's still some scattered remains from King Angmar and Inarius as well, the Cardolan players, but definitely not in the same kind of numbers. They do still, I mean, a decent amount, to be fair. They're not on their last legs by any means, but Viper Action, of course, has had his army pretty much entirely wiped out. He might end the battle with that 1 knight of his still intact. Dunedain Rangers, that's something else that we didn't really see in action, to be fair. Like archers in a situation like this where it's very chaotic. Archers and the like can be so important if you can get them into the right positions. Dunedain Rangers as well, of course, with that body piercing, especially if you can get it along the lines, but not sure if we were... if that was going to be the case with the Rangers, but certainly I would say a lot of the skirmishers, more of the skirmishers than the attacking or ambushing force of Angmar could have afforded here, were able to get into positions to shoot. But part of that could be the fact that because they had relatively high quality armies, they just didn't have the numbers to cover everything. And they did do the right thing by trying to zone out the cavalry as best they could, because charges in the rear from Knights of Illuminus would have been something they would never have been able to recover from. Meanwhile, the Blackguard are over here. This is going to be the end. This general is getting continually battered by those few remaining Tharbad Warhammers, and with the support of the Wardens of Tyr and Gorthad, it's going to take a little while for them to poke and prod these Blackguard down, but they will be able to manage it. This unit of Barrow Wights over here is actually doing much better because they have decent numbers. Here's Viper Action's 1 remaining knight. Of course, they're going to fight to the bitter end, so that will make the numbers a little bit more favourable, but yeah, you can see over here this large force from Eclipse coming in. Definitely a difficult battle for Angmar to have to try and deal with, especially considering the huge amount of damage those Witchers did. Firing right into a massive blob. Could have also got some friendly fire though, it's kind of hard to tell. Here comes another charge from the Knights. Obviously the problem with the Barrow Wights, very low mass. So cavalry, when they charge into it, can just go right through them like tissue paper really, but the Barrow Wights also have a decent amount of... they're obviously very tanky, so you're not necessarily going to kill them all off. I'm not sure what's given the Barrow Wights their green tint now. They used to be sort of... have the sort of pitch black colours. Now they've got a sort of almost a ghoulish green, which is interesting. So, this time around, I believe both of the Cardolan generals did fall, did they not? Which means the Prince of Cardolan, whose name escapes me, will still end up ultimately dying for his people here. But perhaps it's not quite as devastating as it was in the lore for them. Where, of course, this was site of what was effectively a bloody massacre. Now though, Angmar and the Witch King will have to go back to the old drawing board in this alternate history and see what they're able to accomplish. Yeah, decent force they've got left. I'd be surprised, honestly, if... Yeah, I mean, it's not quite 10%. It's still below 15, though, so it's not super close, but it is still reasonably, considering the quality that the Arnorian kingdoms had at their... Well, a good combination of numbers and quality that they had at their disposal, the Arnorian kingdoms. I think Angmar actually did quite well here. They picked their targets well with the Witchers. They did a reasonable job at trying to tie down a lot of the Arnorian assets, but in the end it just wasn't enough, and when Eclipse arrived on the scene, Arnor, a reunified Arnor, started to pull into the lead. And there we go. A nice thematic battle though, certainly on the Barrow Downs. And there we go. Kind of, well, I mean, I would assume that Viper Action is the one who got 996 kills, because he definitely had a bit of an issue against what I would imagine to be Blindness, who got 3496. Kind of difficult to tell, obviously, when the names are like this. But Eclipse, Viper Action. Between the two Cardolan players, I honestly think it wasn't... You couldn't really pick between them. Like, they both did their job reasonably well. Maybe I would say King Ammar was slightly more likely to have picked up more kills than Inarius, just because he was able to get in and amongst the Scourge Raiders reasonably quickly with his cavalry, and he seemed to have a nice force that he sent up towards the hill and tried to engage. He did ultimately get hit by the Witchers though, and then the three Angmar armies, of course, getting a good amount of kills between them. Large armies, a lot of quality on the field today, it must be said. Let's see what did the damage for both Arthedain armies though. Starting off with Eclipses, Dunedain Trollslayers doing very nicely, breaking 200 kills. Wards of the North getting close to 150. Pikemen getting over 120. Dismounted Fornos to Rain Knights. Dunedain Peacekeepers doing very, very nicely. Yeah, Peacekeepers definitely a very nice line infantry, as you can see here. The cavalry was also very useful, it must be said. They were able to charge into the back. It's a good thing he didn't have Lancers, otherwise this battle wouldn't have been anywhere near close, because charging in to the back with Lancers would have been much more effective. But the Dunedain Mounted Company still did their thing, getting near 200 kills. Dunedain Scouts did okay, but a lot of Angmar's units are pretty heavily armoured, so those Dunedain Riders are always going to have a little bit more of a challenge on their hands to get some kills. Knights of Venuminous, meanwhile, for Viper Action, got 283, which is a very good return. The rest of his army struggled against the forces of Dark, 5200 of the Eclipse Cloud. And yeah, so he had a tough task on his hand, Viper Action, tougher than his allies, I would suggest. And he did a decent job, I would say, of trying to do as much damage to Blindness as he possibly could. But yeah, that was a good battle. Big thank you to Eclipse for sending this one to me. He sent me a couple, actually, which we're going to be doing. Hopefully next time we'll be able to do the Siege that he sent me, as well as this nice themed battle. But yeah, I think that will probably be the next replay I do, to be honest with you, because it's always good to see new battles in action, and of course new scenarios. Hopefully as well, at some point in the next couple of weeks, or even the next month or so, hopefully one of the streams that I do can be as part of one of his battles, because they're always a good time, and there's always they're often a scenario as well. So we will see if that is something that can happen. I think it probably can't be the next stream, because I think the next stream is the reveal of the Fingolfin faction in Silmarillion, or at least that's going to be the tentative plan. Obviously these things can change around on the fly pretty quickly, which is why I know that a set schedule would be nice for everyone to have, considering it allows you to plan things out a little bit more easily, but I can't really offer that for the time being, for a few reasons. Obviously the channel update should have been published the day before this video came out, which gives the rundown on what's going to be happening in the near future and perhaps the further future, and the reason why rigid scheduling probably isn't going to be all that viable for me, even with regards to streaming. But streaming is going to be something which I try to keep to the weekends, I think, at least with regards to multiplayer stuff. There is obviously the potential for doing campaigns, which I can be a little bit more... I can do that more easily in the week, because it's only me that I have to rely on rather than getting other people in. But like I said, I would like to do the first Reforged stream. I would like to do actually would probably be as part of one of Eclipse's games, because like I said, they're always a good amount of fun, like this one was. I mean, it's very fast and furious, this one, but definitely a good one nonetheless. And yeah, I feel as though there is definitely something to be gained by showing one off live. But again, that won't be the next one, so it'll probably be, you know, like 2 to 4 weeks, because obviously schedules need to line up, and Eclipse has obviously got his own things going on as well, so we shall have to wait and see on that one. Big thanks to all the players that were a part of this battle as well. Lots of usual suspects here when it comes to joining in on the podcast channel on the Reforged Discord. Something regarding that as well, it's worth saying that I do know that the Discord invite links that I've been posting in my descriptions essentially are invalid. So what I might do, especially when it comes to, I think it might actually be better if I just remove them from regular videos entirely, and instead just post fresh Discord invites depending on which Third Age variant I'm streaming during a stream into the live chat. I think that might be the best way to go about things. I think it might be a little bit better, because then you can post fresh links and it's a little bit easier, rather than just pasting one that doesn't work anymore into the description of every video and to the stream as well. So that's something that I will also be doing. But like I said, next video going to be another one of these podcast scenarios that Eclipse runs, and it's going to be one of the siege battles that he did. I can't remember the name of it, but I think it's a dwarven settlement. He did say that there might be a little bit of lag towards the end, which suggests there's custom architecture which starts to crumble, but it's more limited, so it's only towards the very, very end, which is something I don't mind too much. So hopefully the lag won't make me want to lose the will to live, and hopefully it will still make for a good viewing experience for you all. But we'll wait and see on that one. I'm sure it'll be fine. Like, Eclipse has never steered me wrong in the past. But yeah, that's pretty much the plans for the immediate future. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll join me for whatever is next.